I can do things at WED without asking anybody, even my wife.
Coney Island, world's biggest barrel of fun.
And anywhere else your imagination takes you.
Okay, we've done that now.
To get the whole show now, you hurry.
Anything's possible at Disneyland.
Welcome aboard the Themed Attraction Podcast, where we take you for a ride through the wonderful world of theme park design, that is. You've just set sail toward a wild-eyed adventure of discovery and discussion with theme park industry masters of the craft. I'm your skipper, Freddy Martin, and floating the river with me, as always, is theme park designer, master planner, and chief creative officer for WED Studios, Mel McGowan. Which way's the river leading us today, Mel?
Freddy, there are surprises around every river bend today because we're exploring the twists and turns of the world of project management. Our guest today is here because he's had a crucial role in many of the world's most talked about attractions, including my favorite U.S. park, Epcot, Disney MGM Studios, and Euro Disney. Jeffrey Burton, the former WED Enterprises Imagineer, is another one of those second-generation Imagineers who's turned a great idea and family entertainment into the worldwide attractions industry that we get to be part of today. And he also cuts his teeth under one of my heroes of the industry, John Hench.
Yeah, not only that, his experience makes him one of the go-to mentors for next-generation dreamers and doers today. Alrighty, folks, keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the boat, because this episode is about to leave the dock. Hit it, Sam. Project management it's hard work. I think of some of the excellent project managers that we have on our team here every day at WED Studios, and I cannot help but get that I'm not worthy mentality when I see them, and praise them up and down every chance that I get, because it's just something that they have a skill for, and it's pretty amazing.
You're right, Freddy. And, it takes, we've talked about this a lot, a real diversity of talent and personality types and psychographics to accomplish this collective art form of spatial storytelling or themed entertainment. And again, the folks that have that drive and hunger to not just stay in La La Land in the blue sky sandbox, but actually to get stuff done and get it open. The hunger, the drive, that is can be somewhat few and far between, especially the drive towards excellence and things that really do make memories, not just checking off the box of budget, scope, schedule, and project control.
Yeah. And we get to see that as they kind of tackle some of the harder portions. It's easy to sort of lead in those things, but that behind the scenes, a lot is going on. When you think of team structures that you've worked on, so at Disney or in the different companies that you've been part of in the past, how have you seen that role of project manager sort of bring about the ultimate success of a project?
Well, I think, first of all, I think project management as a discipline, and it's really a team, right? And given the scope or complexity, there's going to be a lot of different people project managing different disciplines, but as a discipline, and especially in regards to the top of that pyramid in terms of the team leader, whether it's a project manager or project director, executive producer, whatever you want to call it, it really is about someone that understands that as much as you try to control things, again, especially the BSs of the project, budget, scope, schedule, good, fast, and cheap, or the project triangle, whatever you want to call it, it really is about people, right? And it's about how do you understand people and what motivates them? How do you look for those gaps in communication? And when I say people, it's also about partnership. And to me, it's really about this marriage, frankly, between the creative leader and that project leader. And if you have that two-way partnership, in a way that's healthy, where there's a mutual respect, clear alignment of roles, responsibilities, and these guys really have the opportunity to go through the stages of forming storming, norming, and performing together. It really can be a beautiful thing to watch what they can do together, when it's a thing where you've got unhealthy silos, or walls between disciplines, and there's a lack of trust or lack of mutual confidence or respect, and people are second guessing, a creative decision, or second guessing a project budget decision. It really can go sideways really quickly. But to me, just thinking of it with that simple metaphor of it's either really healthy, almost marriage and partnership there, or it's not, and that's how partnerships go sideways and go south and end in divorce or whatever. So, or
end in a project just flopping in a horrible way, or getting taken away, moved to a different organization or whatever. And, or it gets done, but that there was only pain along the way.
That's true. Yeah. A lot of it, you can still do great stuff, but man, it is not a fun journey. It's not a fun road trip. So it definitely, if mom and dad aren't getting along together, the kids aren't happy either. So I think it definitely can be a much smoother ride for the team for sure. But again, we're just big believers. We're creating fun, and why not let the journey, that creates a destination also be a fun, emotionally healthy ride if possible. So
that's great. Our guest today is Jeff Burton, an architect and environmental design leader who turned his eye toward themed entertainment when WED Enterprises came calling during the crucial Epcot era. He also took a turn helping iTech Entertainment bring experiences to life for SeaWorld and the Holy Land experience. And now, recorded live at the Storyland Studios Blue Sky booth at IAAPA Expo 2023, it's our Themed Attraction podcast interview with Jeff Burton. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard the Themed Attraction podcast, where we take you for a ride among the wonderful world of theme park design, that is. Welcome, everybody. Hey, gather in. There's still some few seats. We'd love to have you fill in those extra spaces. Like they say on the Jungle Cruise, scoochy, scoochy, scoochy. The more you scoochy, the less we cleany. So get into those seats. Hands, arms, feet, and legs inside as we get ready to go. Well, thank you for joining us here at the Storyland Studios Blue Sky booth. And we are thrilled to be here at IAAPA 2023 together. And we thought a great way to get started would be to have multiple podcast guests on. So once a day, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 11 o'clock, we're going to have multiple great guests here for you to meet and learn from. And I think we're ready to go. Are you guys ready to go?
I think
I'm ready.
All right. Well,
you mic'd up?
You're mic'd up. You guys need a test over there. We're good to go? Awesome.
Mic test.
Well, fantastic.
Radio
my name's Skipper Freddy. This is Mel McGowan, Chief Creative Officer at Storyland Studios. And our guest today is Jeff Burton, a happily retired former Walt Disney Imagineer and project manager and architect. So we're thrilled to have a conversation with him here today. Wow. Every story has a beginning, and most of those beginnings begin with crying because of the baby and a lot of joy. But I want to get started really in the architect phase. So let's not go all the way back. Let's start from
post-womb.
Post-boom.
I know
Post-womb.
architecture school felt like the womb.
Now, I know you started as an architect, Jeff. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got there?
First of all, Freddie and Mel, thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate this. Hopefully we can share some things today that people will benefit from. So
awesome. Can you hear okay? Everybody hear all right? Great.
Architecture started for me when I was 12.
Really?
I said, I think that's a good thing. So I was doing little sketches and drawings and things of that nature, and then moved on through high school to decide where to go to school. Ended up at the University of Illinois in Champaign, Urbana, and got my undergraduate degree there. Left that after a year in Versailles, France, studying with their study abroad program, which was the 60 of us overseas in Versailles, located at the Chateau.
Oh, that's
So
pretty cool.
our studios were in the Petite Écurie, which is the small stables of Louis XIV. So returned to the States, right? Studied with the French, 16 countries visited over that 2-semester period, sketchbooks, projects, all that sort of thing that you'd expect. Back to the States, moved back to my home state of Wisconsin, worked for an architect there, got my license to practice in Wisconsin. 4 years out, went back to the University of Illinois as a graduate student, was a graduate assistant there to help with classwork with undergraduates. Graduated there in 1979, got my license to practice in Illinois in 79, and they asked me to stay on and teach. And I was teaching up through the fall or the spring of 1980.
Are there any architects in the house? Any architects in the house? All right. How about architect students? There's an architect. We got architecture student. Fantastic. I think the goal, or not the goal, but the trick here is that architecture opens doors, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Having practiced and going back to school, getting the license, you start to determine what is it I want to do with my life. And while at the university, an opportunity presented itself to join the Disney team. Now, I had been out for a while, working in an office, doing drafting and design studies and things of that nature. But eventually you have to get a real job after school or a more permanent job. I had applied to teach at other universities. I'd applied to and had offers there, and had an offer to write for an architectural magazine, which I thought was kind of an interesting approach to how I would use my architectural training. The result, though, was I answered an ad that was posted in the the Los Angeles Times that said, "Mickey wants you."
So what year is this? What year?
1980.
So why does Mickey want you history buffs? Because Mickey needs to build an Epcot.
Epcot Center and Tokyo Disneyland. So they were looking for people. 2-page ad in the LA Times, posted. I didn't subscribe. It came to me on a bulletin board in a design studio brought by one of the professors that we'd hired from UCLA who was going to join the faculty at Illinois. So I looked at that. It said, here's what you need to do. Apply here. I sent for the materials, got the materials, sat down, filled it all out, and got to the point where the question was, what position are you applying for?
So naturally you said architect, right?
I did not say architect.
Okay.
I had a very good coach as a very senior professor. I'd taken his classes, and then when I went back to school for my master's degree, I worked with him. We team taught Introduction to Architecture and Environmental Design, and at the time I was teaching that course as the professor and working with students in architectural construction. I said, Uncle Walter, his name is Walt Lewis, Professor Walt Lewis. Everybody called him Uncle Walt. So
that can be confusing, right? That's a little
for a few of us. It took us a while to just call him Walt, but one day we decided as a graduate group, let's try this out. Let's call him Walt. And it didn't faze him. It wasn't like, oh, you got to call me professor. So we were kind of on equal terms there. I said, what do you think I should put down here? And his statement to me was, write this: project management, liaison between Florida and California for the Epcot project. I said, well, okay, good. I don't know what project management is, but I'll write that down.
Writing specs for your career.
Right.
Well, it turned into something very, very excellent. So the next question was, where do we send this? So the address that was on the application said WED Maple Employment. And I said, that just sounds like a big box somewhere where applications are dropped in and then somebody starts to go through them. And I said, we have to find some way to get to a higher authority, if you will. So Uncle Walter and I looked. He had just been to Florida for a keynote address with the landscape architects and was present and met or saw Card Walker do some address to the folks there. And then he happened to obtain a copy of the comprehensive plan for the property, the Walt Disney World property. So he looked in all the data he had and he said, well, here's a name. It's Card Walker. I said, okay. He said, why don't you send it to Card Walker, which is what I did. I packed up my little brief portfolio, my resume, and a nice cover letter that said what I'd been doing, right? Licensed, practiced architecture, taught architecture, and I sent it off. Within a week, I had a response. I was called by WED Imagineering, John Zovich's office, who was the vice president of engineering. Can you come this direction on June 12th? And I said, no. Well, I was scheduled for another interview, and I said, I'm already committed on June 12th. They said, well, Mr. Zovich is going to be out of town. Can you come on July 1st? I said, yes. And July 1st arrived. I packed up all my stuff, briefcases full of drawings and sketches and portfolios and resumes, and I got on an airplane. Disney flew me first class to California. I arrived at Imagineering offices on Flower Street, and they took me to see Mr. Zovich and Mr. Stacy, Bud Stacy and John Zovich, and we sat and we had a very nice interview. And I said, do you want to see my portfolio, which I had actually two of them with me, carted them on the plane, right, sitting right beside me, and they said, no. That's not what you're going to be doing.
Uh-huh.
So putting the word project management on the application turned into what I actually was assigned. And I flew home on July 5th and got back to my apartment in Urbana and had an offer. And on August 1st, now remember, the interview was July 1st. August 1st, everything I owned was in a trailer moving to California, including my car. And everything in the trailer collapsed on my car also because they built a...
the moving stories that we could share.
It's a lowrider.
So now, who did you immediately work for?
So I was... Disney was transitioning from using engineer-type folks to using architect-type folks for project management. And so I was one of the first ones to be transitioned, if you will, into project management. But I worked for Jim Nagy, who was Tishman's project director, but seconded to WDI for the project. Great guy. It was absolutely terrific. But the offer came from WDI. It wasn't from Jim, but I was assigned to Jim as one of the PMs. I had an office that I shared initially with Bob Mansfield, who had all 10 of the World Showcase pavilions at that moment. So
he was project managing all 10.
He had all 10.
Wow.
Now, it was being broken up. So Bob Smith had been given Germany and Italy. So I was the next one in, and they asked me to do Costa Rica and Morocco. Now, you know there's no Costa Rica there, right? And you know that Morocco came in 1983, which was about a year after our opening of Epcot. So I was working along, just happy to do those two projects. Bob walked me into the office or the conference room where I think Costa Rica team was meeting. So it was a room full of people. He opened the door, walked in with me, said, "This is Jeff Burton. He's the new project manager." And he walked out and closed the door. That was my introduction to working with teams at Disney. And so it was a room full of people, a consultant in there as well who was doing documentation. That went along for less than a year, and Costa Rica vanished from the opening day slate. Morocco also vanished from the opening day slate, although it came back. So in between there, they asked me to work on Scandinavia, which eventually became the Norway Pavilion, but it was moved to the other side of the lagoon. And we didn't do much with that.
The Arundel Pavilion.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I'm frozen out of that one now. But the real project that came up, right? Bob Smith took on Germany. He had other responsibilities. They gave me Italy, and along with Bill Tyson, the project engineer, we put the project together, Italy. If you go back in time and look at some of the photographs that were taken, and you go back to an eyes and ears, there's a single photograph on one of the eyes and ears during the Epcot project that I don't know if Bill took it or not, but we were out there one day and we looked at all of the fiberglass panels that were going to go up on the Italy Pavilion.
Yeah.
And I said, Italy Pavilion, some assembly required. Bill, that evening, went home, made the sign, and stuck it by all of the panels. And then Eyes and Ears photographer took a picture of it. So that was Bill Tyson and me figuring that out and having a laugh, a non-serious moment in the middle of all the seriousness that was going on. About the spring or the late fall of 80 or 81, WDI management came to me and said, we need a China Pavilion for opening day.
So that wasn't on the slate. China wasn't on the slate?
Was not on the slate, wasn't on the drawing boards, wasn't designed, anything. Now, we're going to open in October of 82. So this is a race.
Yeah.
And they asked me to do that, and I was happy to do it. The chief designer for the project was Dalmans Grants, a genius. Latvian, if I'm not mistaken, but he had skills like crazy. Architect skills, engineering skills, all of that. So we started out, we got the documents done with a consultant in Los Angeles. So we went down to get the documents prepared, the working drawings that could be priced by contractors. And we finished that exercise, priced it, and got moving on the project. One of the things that Dalmans said was, if we can do something to help move this along, just be aware, already the foundations for UK and Canada had been placed. We were just bidding the job, so somewhat ahead. So Dalmans took it on himself to do shop drawings for all the steel that was needed for the China Pavilion. And it's very complex because it has a dome structure and the like. So it's not simple steel. You had to make sure things were going to go together correctly. We got permission from Imagineering Engineering to allow the contractor access to the shop drawings for the steel. And we just made sure that they took responsibility for all of that, but we turned it over to them and they went, looks good to us. Let's build some steel.
Yeah.
They did. They shipped it, and the steel for the China Pavilion was erected and in place before UK and Canada steel was in place.
That's kind of a badge of honor. You're the first one up.
You don't look back on some of these things. You just look forward and you go, what do I have to do? I know the date. Everybody knew the date, by the way. There was a ton of campaigns at WDI to make sure everybody understood what the dates were that we had to hit to make this happen. So China was going to have a film, and there was also a plan for a museum, 2 restaurants, a sit-down and a fast food, and a merchandise emporium that was huge. 2,500 square feet emporium.
Huge deal, right? First U.S. film crew allowed in People's Republic of China.
Absolutely, and they're the only ones that traveled to China for the project. So they took the helicopter Circle Vision rig, and then they had to be accompanied. So it all worked out marvelously good. It was just spectacular. Dalmans also designed, and if you didn't know it, the colorful decorations that you see everywhere on the pavilion, That is all done with vinyl stickers.
Really?
Yes.
They're still using vinyl today. I love it.
Vinyl stickers. So he did all the
This is a big
designs for
getaway.
that. They were cut to fit the beams and the columns and whatever else
Yeah.
was needed. Dalmont's designed the ends of the fiberglass tiles, the little decorations that went on there. So every speaker enclosures inside the dome, there's a design in there, right? Because there's a design that goes around the ceiling. The speaker is hidden, but it has to have a perforated metal grill. That grill had a design. It got silk screened on there. And off we went. It was interesting because one night we were putting out putting stickers on the gate that's at the entrance to the China Pavilion, and Dick Nunes, who's the president of Walt Disney World at the time, came by and he said, "Jeff, is there anything that you need?" And I said, "Well, we're just trying to get this all done at night here." And he says, "Can you use some more light?" And I said, "That would be great." So he got on his radio, and everybody knows who he is on the radio, and he called out one of the fire trucks, and the fire truck drove down the promenade, set up, and turned on the lights for the fire truck, illuminating the gate.
Wow. You had to have a fire truck to get your work done overnight.
Wonderful things happening. We're working at night, and it was just a wonderful display of everybody together working. That's one of the things about Epcot Center that really impressed me, right? Walt Disney Imagineering was going from about 300 people when I applied, I guess, to about 2,500 people. So you can imagine how people had to depend on each other and try to figure out who could do what and how you could do it together as a team. But then there was an overall Epcot vibe, if you will, for getting this new project done. It was a wonderful experience.
Jeff, how do you think that your training as an architect kind of helped on the project management side? Because, I've been in the room where you walk in as an architect, contractor thinks you're some crazy just coloring artist guy. And then you walk into another room with Imagineers and creative concept designers. The buzzkill guy's here. He's going to talk about budget, scope, schedule.
Yeah, it can go both ways. But I think the key to an architectural background and then doing project management is that you have the ability to communicate with multidisciplinary teams. So when I was in school, right, out working, I was doing structural engineering calculations. I was doing thermal energy calculations for buildings. I was doing the drafting, right? Lighting, right? I was wiring buildings. Now they weren't big buildings, but we were actually using all those skills. So when you encounter the Imagineering teams, there are more skills available there that you have to coordinate and work with and kind of bring together to make it work. And the architecture background really, really, really helps with that. And that's what I tell young architects, that you have a great starting off point for many, many things that you can do. It's not just sitting down and designing. It's not managing an architectural firm. It may be project management, where you have multiple people working with you, some working for you, but you have to bring it all together.
Yeah.
So it involves all the different disciplines, and at Imagineering, there's a ton of those.
Yeah.
Any keys to a successful partnership with your creative design directors?
Well, one, I think you have to respect everybody that's you're assigned and that you're working with. That's the first step. You have to take everybody as an expert. That's what I always did. I didn't have time to interview everybody and say, yeah, I want you and you and you. It's not a ball field where the last guy to pick up the bat is on your team or whatever, right? Everybody you treat as an expert, and you want to learn from them so you can work together better, and you want to have them understand that you're there for them, right? And you support them. Project managers had to do all the reporting.
Yeah. Any project managers in the house? Anybody a project manager? I know that they are. I see a few. Good. The sort of that like anchor point where everything, all the rubber bands are tied to that. If that fails, then the rest falls apart.
No, it's a true statement. So mostly the reporting centered on issues that needed to be resolved, which could be financial, they could be design issues, they could be engineering issues, it could be almost anything that came up on a project filtered through project management into a report brief that was delivered once a month.
Yeah.
You had to stand up there or sit there and talk about it, and you had to know it inside and out. So, Mel, one of the answers is you better get acquainted with your team, and you better understand why they need something else, right? We talked about visual intrusions. So you walk around the project, you see, why are we looking at that air conditioning unit, right? And even though the best efforts were made to hide it, now you got to spend some more money to actually cloak it in something else.
Yeah.
And it's just a small example. So there's a ton of things that you need to accommodate with all of your team members that make the project go smoothly.
Did you know that the human brain is wired for story? It's why Storyland Studios places story at the heart of everything we do. Storyland Studios is a full-service experience design and strategy firm that imagines, designs, and creates story-driven experiences that lift the spirit. Inspired by the design principles of the original Walt Disney Imagineers, our award-winning team collaborates closely to provide strategic design solutions that will help bring your ideas to life. Through strategic experience design, immersive storytelling, and exceptional service, we imagine with you, design beside you, and create world-class experiences and destinations that are enjoyed by millions of guests and visitors on every habitable continent around the globe. Connect with the team at Storyland Studios to get started building your impossible dream today. Visit StorylandStudios.com or call now, 800-218-1932. That's 800-218-1932. Storyland Studios. Imagine, design, create.
So you moved on after you were at Disney. You were at and at scale. Disney has every discipline, redundancies, lots of all. There's so much budget, and you moved to a smaller team to work on projects. What is that like being in the
You're not
smaller?
going to skip Morocco and Paris, are you?
Oh, did I?
You're killing me,
I'm
bro.
sorry. I didn't.
Yeah, Morocco, man. That is by far my favorite thing that Disney did in the 80s.
Okay, I'll go back to Morocco.
The only worthy successor to New Orleans Square. The intricate. Can you talk a little bit about working with the local craftsmen that the king brought in for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So Morocco was resurrected on a slightly smaller scale. Originally, it was going to have a show, and to get it back into budget so that it could be funded through the government of Morocco, the Ministry of Tourism, the project was shrunk down a little bit, resurrected. We bid it. So it had a restaurant, it had shops, it had a museum, it had a couple other things that were, outside as decorations and the like. And what we did, and it had an office for the tourism, right? Because that was the reason for doing the pavilion, to promote tourism to Morocco. So the question was, how do you get all the intricate detail that's needed to make that pavilion authentic? And it falls into 3 or 4 categories. One is the tile that's on the walls.
Yep.
So if you go there and you touch the tile, you'll feel it, and it's actual mosaic, small little tiles put together. The ceilings and other wooden artifacts, right, like window dressings and the chairs in the restaurant, all made in Morocco, just like the tile, hand painted. The plaster that you see, the friezes that you see all around there, that's carved. It was all carved in place on site. So 22 Moroccan artisans. We found someone that could help us bring those artisans to the United States. We housed them for 6 months on property. and every day they went out to the pavilion and put things together there. The tile was put together backstage in the old precast yard. And we're garbled here.
We're garbled here. Switch you out.
In the old precast yard, we created flat slabs on which they placed the tiles and made them into panels, then took them to the site and put them on the walls, which is exactly the way they do it in Morocco. So when you're looking at Morocco and you're looking at China, if you compare them side by side, China has 8,000 pieces of fiberglass and colorful decals. Morocco has 9 metric tons of authentic tile that was shipped here, plus authentic ceilings, authentic carved plaster, right? All the brass works that you see on the doors or anywhere else made in Morocco, except one sign which says Kingdom of Morocco, I think.
Yeah.
That's a big difference in how you look at how things come together. And go ahead.
Yeah,
Mel.
no, I was just gonna say I love taking some architect snob friends that turn their nose up at this Mickey Mouse operation, and then to take them to the back alleys of Morocco and just help them get a sense of how many man hours went into not only the design, the documentation, but the actual craftsmanship of executing something like that.
I traveled to Morocco with some of the designers. We went to the shops that made the light fixtures, they're all the brass.
Right.
Went to the shops that made the wood ceilings. Went to the shops, the workshop that did the tile. So I watched tile being fired, right? It's big black smoke coming out of a furnace where you fire the tiles. Tiles are about 4 inches square, and then they're all cut using templates for the small pieces that are made. And some of the pieces you'll notice, you go out and look at the pavilion, some of the pieces are no bigger than an apple seed, and somebody cuts that tile. Some of them have 16 points on them, and you're lucky if when you're cutting it, it survives to 16, because then there's a spoil pile over here of broken tiles that just can't be used.
Wow.
The biggest thrill, I guess, that I had was sometime around opening day. I always like to spend time in the project after we open. I no longer owned the project. That was turned over to others. So I didn't walk around with a name badge on or anything like that. I was back in the streets, the Medina, we called it, standing there. And a couple of folks came up to me and said, "We're lost. How do we get out?"
They were lost in
Morocco. And I said, "We made it." Because I've been to Morocco, in the Medina, in Fez, in Marrakesh, and you need a guide, right? I could help them out. So we got them out. But that was pleasant for me because it was what we intended, right? This whole flavor of Morocco was there. So all the people that participated in that project, from the folks that we sent to Morocco to buy authentic carpets and merchandise and props and dressings for the pavilion, that's part of the success. That's all important. I don't know what it is now, but it was imported at that point.
That's great.
One of Walt Disney's friends was Ray Bradbury, and he wrote an essay that's been really influential to me called Deliriously Lost. We actually talked about it yesterday with Meow Wolf during our panel, and it's so rare for that to happen in a theme park setting, especially like a World Showcase where you're constantly, facing that lagoon and you don't have that sense of discovery and lostness. And Morocco is one of the few places, along with places like Diagon Alley, that you get that wonderful feeling.
Well, if you look at Morocco, there's no Circle Vision, there's no film, there's no ride, at least not yet. So when you want to bring the Kingdom of Morocco and you want to put it right in front of people, the only way to do it is this authentic way, right? So the design the execution with how the tile was put on, the plaster, the wall. Many people may not realize that when they're walking through. They just go, "Oh, this looks pretty cool," right?
Yeah, right.
They don't understand the history, and they're maybe not supposed to understand it because in total it communicates to you exactly what a Circle Vision would do in the China Pavilion, right? You're in a setting, right? So when you're standing in China and you look at 9 screens all the way around you, right? All the way around, 360, you are participating in something where you're actually going there.
Yeah.
In Morocco, no show. The pavilion's the show.
The pavilion's
Transported.
the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to ask you, I was a young architecture student when the World Olympics of Starchitecture were going on around the hotels at Disneyland Paris, when Michael Eisner decided that he wanted to be a modern Medici and come up with this concept of entertainment architecture. And after he had done the Dolphin and Swan here and hired Michael Graves to do the Disney corporate headquarters, someone thought about getting kind of the most renowned celebrity starchitects on the planet together, and you were somehow at the epicenter of all that. How did that happen?
Well,
how was that?
I completed the work at Epcot in 1988 with the Norway Pavilion. And then Wing Chao and I had always kind of been close. I interviewed with him. It was the second interview I had that day at Disney. And just a little, if I back up just a little bit, about 3 weeks after I landed at Disney in 1980, I got my mail that was forwarded to me from my place in Illinois, came to me at Disney. And I sliced it, because one of them was a Disney envelope. I sliced it open, WDI envelope, and I opened up the letter, and it said, no, I've already been working for about 2 or 3 weeks. And the letter said, thank you for interviewing with us. Unfortunately, we don't have a position for you. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. So I went over to see Bud Stacy, and I said, Bud, I just got this letter. What do you want me to do? And he said, ignore that, go back to work, which I did. I didn't probe it too deeply, but later I figured out that I had 2 interviews. One was resulted in the offer. The other was with Wing, and that kind of built a relationship with Wing. He said, look, I really wanted to hire you. I just didn't have a position available at the time. Because when I went to see Wing Chao, I opened up my portfolios and briefcases, and in one of them was a copy of the comprehensive plan for the property. And Wing knew what it looked like on the front cover. And he said, where did you get that? And I said, I got that from Uncle Walter, right? And so I told him a little bit about that. And Wing said to me, I wrote that. And I said, I read it. And I had read it, and I knew all the pavilions in Epcot before I interviewed. So this is a hint about how you go about interviewing. You better know what company you're working for or towards does, all about what they're currently doing, what they've done in the past. Listen, I had never been to a Disney theme park. I'd never been to a theme park at all. My first visit was in 1980 in July. The day after I interviewed, I went down and bought a ticket at Disneyland, and I said, I got to work for these guys. So that started the relationship with Wing. So we'll fast forward.
Wing Chao, by the way, Vice President of Master Planning and Design for Disney.
I'm sorry, yes. Also a Mandalorian actor.
Mandalorian
right.
Cameo, Governor
Yes.
Chao.
So finally, after Norway Pavilion, I went to see Wing, and he goes, okay, looks like we can finally get together. Would you like to work on the hotels for Euro Disneyland? And I said, sure. And he goes, all right, this is what we're going to do. So I joined up. I moved my office to where the hotels were being developed here. And then I started flying back and forth to Paris. And as you said, Mel, Michael had the idea to hire big-name architects to do things. So Michael Graves, Frank Gehry, Antoine Predock, Christian Portson Park.
Bob Stern?
Yes, Bob Stern. So people had already worked in the States for Michael and Disney. and some people out of Europe that were well-known architects there. The one they assigned me to, look, I started out, we lived in the Grand Hotel in Paris, right? I'd go there for 2 weeks, stay in a hotel. We'd walk down the corridor in the hotel to a conference room. That's where we caucused and met with the architects and the development team. And the architects were each given a stipend to do a concept for a hotel. They were given the name of a hotel, and they were told, you've got to, come up with something that, we can sell to management, and then we can build. 5,200 hotel rooms, I think 5 hotels. One of them was already under design. That's the entrance hotel, the Disneyland Hotel.
Paris.
Yeah, Disneyland Paris entrance hotel, and that was done in California. That's a unique thing for the parks, by the way, to have a hotel with rooms overlooking Main Street and the rest of the park. So I think they're pricey, but
I bet.
they asked me to caucus with Robert Venturi, architect. He's passed on now, but his concept was to be the Las Vegas hotel. And
he wrote the book, Learning from Las Vegas,
Learning from
probably
Las
one
Vegas,
of the
so-
most influential textbooks of
Yeah.
postmodern architecture.
I visited his office. I had read his book called Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture. So when I walked in, I saw Bob. And by the way, Bob wears button-down shirts, but they're not buttoned. and I asked somebody, but I says, no, that's the way he wears them. Don't try to tell him to button them. So I didn't. So I met Bob, and I said, this is an honor to meet you, right, as an architect, right? And it's great. And I said, when I was in school, I read your book, Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture. He goes, really? I said, yes, I did. That was one of the assigned readings. He goes, come in. He calls me in his office. He goes up on the shelf. He pulls one down, and he signs it for me, which I thought, this is great. This is one of the reasons that you enjoy working for Disney is you get to meet people like this. You get to work with them. So eventually the slate of hotels was narrowed down, and the architects were narrowed down through that process of what you might call a paid competition, if you will. And the architects were chosen then to do not only the hotels, but Frank Gehry got what downtown Disney, I guess you could call it.
Right.
I don't remember what it's called now, Disney Village or something now in Paris. And so they continued with that. And I had an enjoyable time working with Bob and his staff. It was interesting to see how Frank Gehry works. If you want to see, look up sometime Frank Gehry sketches and see what they look like and try to figure out how that goes from that sketch to a building.
Yeah, why?
I like it because he makes me feel like I can draw, just like the Sex Pistols made me think that I could play guitar. Worked out great.
Well, we got to wrap it up. We have so much
goodness.
more to talk about. I might have to do another episode sometime. But listen, I kind of want to cap it off. Your work at Disneyland Paris eventually ended up in you getting a window on Main Street. How did that happen? And how'd that make you feel?
Well, that happened because I transitioned out of the real estate group into being the project director for Main Street USA, which included that, all 11 buildings there, the streetcars, the 3 steam trains, antique vehicles, horse-drawn carriages, and then the entrance complex that went from the RER and TGV stations directly under the hotel, where I had ticketing as a responsibility as well. All right.
Wow.
So now I went to opening day with Imagineering, back to Imagineering.
And Jeff, we had Eddie Sato on the podcast, your design partner in crime there.
Absolutely. Eddie was great. He's the big conceptor for the Main Street project, getting all the things that he wanted in, and some didn't make it, but that's Eddie. Get a lot designed.
We're
so
still
we can
missing
choose.
the gangster version of
exactly.
Main Street.
But it's the 1910s, and that kind of worked out just fine. So a lot of success with Main Street. Now, what I didn't know is that Eddie was working hand in glove with Marty Sklar to look at the windows on Main Street. And all of you know there's lots of windows on all of the parks on Main Street. And so that was a rather big surprise to find out that all, the 6 of us as project directors for the 5 lands plus area development were honored with a window it's the fire station, the Main Street Volunteer Fire Station, and the window where our names are, it says, "Putting out fires before they start." And so to wrap it up for Mel, if Mel wants to know the definition of project management, that's it. It's on the window. Putting out fires before they start.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you, guests, for sitting with us and listening as we heard about this fantastic story. We have so many more coming your way. Listen in on the Themed Attraction podcast for when Jeff's episode is released soon. Tomorrow, we have as our guest, we have as our guest Linda Alcorn tomorrow. And she is a former WDI engineer, the first female engineer at Disney. And she's going to tell her stories with us tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jeff. What a blessing to have you with us.
It was a pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, we're going to hang out a little bit. And if you want to talk to Jeff, say hello. We'll be here for a few minutes. And looking forward to meeting you.
I get the sense from Jeff that there's so much more that meets the eye when it comes to taking a theme park project from big idea to the opening day. And when you see it all working together as a puzzle and all these pieces start coming together, Mel, what's your response to seeing the teams that you're leading come together and really create something special?
You know, it really is one of the biggest joys, you know, in terms of this stage in my career, to see these teams that actually, you know, have grown to actually love and trust each other, you know, because I've seen over the course of my career that pendulum swing, you know, from the creative guys having all the power to the project control people, you know, having all in kind of those extremes, but to actually have kind of a harmonious, fun, Zen balance is shockingly unusual, I'd say, in our industry. And I think it's become a little bit of a hallmark, and it's not accidental. It's certainly intentional, and so it definitely brings just a level of satisfaction, because to have again created that opportunity for folks to actually create stuff that's fun, but also to have fun while doing it. Shockingly not easy to do, and not as common as you might think in a fun industry.
Yeah. And much gratitude to each one of the team members that we get to work with every day. Well, Mel, I think it's time. I need to check in with my project manager at home. It's time to turn this leaky tiki around. What do you say we head back to the dock?
Can't wait.
Until next time, thanks, Mel. The Themed Attraction podcast is hosted by Freddy Martin and Mel McGowan. We want you to know that we do not take the fact that you are listening to this show right now for granted. We love to make this show, and we want to continue making more. Would you do us a favor and leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify? That'll really help others to find the show, and it'll encourage us to keep it going. We want to thank our special guest, Jeff Burton. Listen in on his panel discussion with themed entertainment students on the Themed Attraction YouTube page. Get access to new shows, stories, and interviews at themedattraction.com. Start your own profile, discuss the latest advancements, and interact with your fellow theme park designers around the world. Follow the action on Instagram and X at Themed Attraction, and join our active discussion group on LinkedIn. Connect with Mel by email via mel@storylandstudios.com, or follow him on X at Mel McGowan and Instagram at Visioneer. You can find me at freddymartin.net and follow my adventures at Skipper Freddy on Instagram and X. Our theme music was composed by Rob Watson. Other music provided by The Lost Dogs. This episode was designed and produced by the one and only Dr. Barry Hill. Barry is the publisher of Rivershore Press, maker of fine, absolutely beautiful books on parks and design. He's also the host of America's Disneylands, a podcast on the history of regional theme parks. Check out all the fun stories in history at americasdisneylands.com and find great books to read at rivershorepress.com. You know, Mel, Barry knows a whole lot about birds here in the jungle. He stumped me the other day, quizzing me on the life cycle of the mighty ostrich. Did you know what an ostrich chick becomes after it's 10 days old? 11 days old. Thanks for listening, folks.